So what are we doing? What are we talking about? My hunky boys, we're talking about Morkheim. What is Morkheim? Morkheim is a combination of two things. It is a combination of the miniature skirmish game Mordheim by Games Workshop, set in the old world of Warhammer Fantasy. It is also Morkborg, and it's serendipitous that those names are very similar. Morkborg, for those of you who don't know, is a tabletop RPG system. It's meant to be a little bit darker tone, both mechanically and fictionally. Well, Morkheim is going to be an open table game. What does that mean? An open table game it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a game where it's an open table so that we don't have one set of player characters every week. We will have a rotating cast. One of the best ways I can describe an open table is like a MMA RPG. It's a massively multiplayer analog role-playing game. So you have a bunch of different people playing characters, venturing into this city of Morkheim, looking for God knows what, and coming back out, probably bruised and battered to some extent, maybe with or without rewards. Morkheim is meant to be dark. It's meant to be funny. A lot of gallows humor or black humor, black comedy, if you're familiar with that. It's meant to have emergent gameplay. Players and their characters can determine what matters to them the most. And it's meant to be fun. That's first and foremost, it's meant to be fun. I've had this idea of running an open table campaign for a very, very long time. A very, very, very long time. And there's been a couple times where someone has announced, hey, we're doing a project and it's going to be a new TTRPG campaign, actual play, whatever you want to call it. And I think, oh my God, they're going to do the open table idea and it's going to take off and I'm going to be upset because I didn't do it. I didn't try it. So this is a way of me, A, forcing myself to do it so that way it's on stream, and B, that it's even just done in general. I don't want this idea to just kind of be one of the ones that just winds up being an idea that I never really get to do. So that's one of the reasons why I'm also kind of committing to streaming it. I don't even know if I'm unique in this space. I'm not. I'm just a dude, but at least it'll be up on the internet. And hopefully we'll get some cool ideas from y'all as well that I can steal. And hopefully there'll be an equal transference there where you might see some ideas that you think are dope from me and you yank that shit, as you should. So where are we going to start here? I'm going to run this in Foundry VTT. On top of me doing a conversion of a game I've never played into a game I've never played, I'm also going to be setting it up in a virtual tabletop that I've never ran in. I've only ever ran games in Roll20. I've had Foundry for a while and I've messed around with it a little bit, and I will say that I already like it a lot more than Roll20. I just think it's better. I have notes. Oh Lord, do I have notes. I technically have two versions of the game, and that's one of the things we're going to remedy tonight. I have one that exists on my laptop, and I have one that exists on my PC. And right now, the one on my laptop is the one that is the most up to date because I was actually working on this today. But the first thing I need to do is delete this. This is on my PC. This is the outdated one. And I need to import the new one. And I also wrote out what I think is going to be like, how do we play, right? And so far, I have this. The game will start and there will be a settlement events table roll performed and the results resolved. What the hell is the settlement events table roll? In Mordheim, in the lore, Mordheim is a city that is blasted and it experiences an apocalyptic event of a meteor crashing into it and just decimating the city. A couple of things go along with that. A, the city was particularly crowded because the popular religion of the land of Mordheim, where Mordheim existed, believed that the meteor was a sign of the second coming of their god emperor. A lot of people, extra people, rushed to Mordheim to witness this religious event. Bad news is it was a religious event, but not the one that they thought it was going to be. The city is crowded and cramped, celebrating the second coming of their god king, and then the meteor crashes into it, blows the whole city up. That's problem number one. A lot of extra people died there. Problem number two, the meteor isn't just a normal meteor from space. It is, at the very least, without getting too much into it, is at the very least made of a thing called, in our game, Witchstone. Witchstone is like a solidified essence of, it's like weird chaos magic ichor. It's like when, you know, women who are in seances from like the Victorian era and they have like weird stuff coming out of their mouth. It's like that, right? It's like a solidified essence of chaos theory in magic. It's just wild magic. And that is really, really powerful. Obviously, it can be used as a fuel, it can be used as a weapon. Mostly the second one. It's very expensive. It's worth a lot of money. So when the impact happens, it doesn't just wipe out a large part of the city and ruin the city, essentially. It also disperses all of that witchstone that made up the meteor across the city, not just at the impact zone of the pit where it landed, but also the surrounding city itself. So now what do you have? You have a bunch of different factions from all over the place kind of gathering around the ruined city, setting up camps to then venture into the city and try to recover this weird stone, or witch stone. It's weird stone in Warhammer Fantasy. And sometimes they fight each other, and sometimes they fight other things that they find growing in the city. So how does that equate to a settlement events table role? Well, there are settlements that arise around the city. The one that our players are probably going to play in is one that I've called Payne's Porch, and it is kind of like the lowest of the low. It's you know, you have a camp that's meant for like the aristocracy and like the very religious people that are coming from the capital of the human population. You have a secular and a non-secular camp, right? And then you have a third encampment, which is the poorest one, which would be Payne's Porch. In Wartime, the game, these encampments had events that you could roll on that would kind of auto-populate events that are happening in the settlement or the encampment at that time. So that's what we'll do. First things first is to roll on that settlement events table, find out kind of what state the camp is in. From there, if the party doesn't have a set goal, we would have 3 or 4 scenarios rolled up ahead of time, and we would kind of form those into rumors that various NPCs from around the encampment can provide the players. One of the important things about an open table, and we kind of talked about it earlier, is the idea of emergent gameplay, where whatever the players want to invest in, they're able to. And from my experience running open table games, most of the time we'll be in a Discord server and I'll say, hey, I'm available to run games Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'll have a bunch of different people messaging me, as usually first come, first serve. And someone will message me, say, hey, I'm available on Monday. I'll say, okay, what do you want to do? And I leave it up to that player who chose that day to kind of have first pick at what their goal might be. So it's something that their character or them as a person are interested in that they can do. And that kind of sets the goal for the entire party. If that isn't possible, then what we can do is we can roll a couple scenarios up and then present them as rumors. Hey, you know, bartender Y heard about this war band that found something there. We should go find out, you know, where they're at. Or, hey, we heard of this weird reports of this weird elf being traveling by himself, murking every single warband that he finds, including other elves. That's kind of weird, right? And these scenarios, in all odds, or in all likelihood, are going to be rolled up from some table that's made up of scenarios from Mordheim. Mordheim, being a skirmish tabletop game, was scenarios were basically how you set up it. The scenarios determined what the goal of a session was, like what the objectives were that the miniatures were going to be fighting over, and any extraneous rules that might be special to that scenario, as well as kind of deployment zones and stuff like that. We can take a lot of that mechanical stuff out and just kind of leave the spicy lore bit in there and use those. They don't have to use them, but I think it's good. It presents the game as a living world to the players, where even if they do have a goal that they want to do, even if they have 3 goals that they want to get done for that session, for them to have those 3 goals, then while they're gearing up and buying stuff before they head into the ruins of Morkheim, they hear some merchants whispering about some rumors that they heard. I think that's good, and they can still be true even if they aren't pursued. So we have a settlement events table roll. From there, we have a party being offered a couple scenarios if they don't have one prepped as far as a goal. Number 3 would be a designated party member rolls some form of navigation roll to go from district to district in the city. There are going to be different NPCs in different locations in each one of the districts. Thankfully, this was kind of already taken care of for me because Morkheim already kind of had this laid out as far as the districts go on a map. I've thought about making an entirely new map, and I have the capability to, but I kind of feel like in the spirit of Morkheim, I think that, or in the spirit of Mordheim, more accurately, kind of want to leave the layout of the city as is, kind of as a nod to the origins of the game. I want people who have never played Mordheim, like if you're watching an actual play of this and you have played Mordheim in the past, I want you to be able to be like, oh, they're going to go to this location. Oh, and look, they're running into this, you know, they're going to this district, and oh, they ran into this location, or they found this NPC that I'm familiar with from the game. I want that to happen kind of like as Easter eggs. The navigation rolls are kind of a thing that most West Marches games have. West Marches are kind of like open table games, but instead of happening with the exploration of a city, it happens with exploring the wilderness around a town. Poor rolls would lead to complications, including encounters with opposing war bands outside of what they already were supposed to be doing, and exploration can be performed in each quarter that is visited during the session. So that means that like each district that gets visited, they are able to explore it if they decide, or they can just keep pushing on, and that's kind of them running some risks. They might find some really cool stuff, they might find some enemies, and they might find some enemies and some cool stuff, and the enemies probably want the cool stuff as well. From there, players would get to whatever kind of the main goal scenario is for the session. We resolve that, and then once that scenario is resolved, we would have some sort of expedited rolls to get back into camp, and then I'm going to add one more: resolve any loose threads from this session, and that would be like wounds, loot, etc. In Mordheim, the game, your miniatures could die, but they could also be knocked out, and that's where, you know, they are incapacitated, and then they're essentially out of the game until they are dragged back by your other miniatures back to the encampment, where they are then able to be like operated on. Sometimes they'll walk away just with like losing an arm. Sometimes they'll go to the surgeon at the encampment, and depending on what encampment you're in, they die. Also, not just that, but looking at loot, experience, leveling up, all that jazz. That's kind of the order of a session. So what do we need to do first? We need to, and there's a bunch of other systems that I want to add into the game, but it needs to be one step at a time. The goal right now is to get the rough structure of these steps in place as bare bones as possible, so that way I can then run a game and see how it goes, and see if I need to make any changes, run a couple sessions, talk to the players, and see how they feel about it, what they think. Because again, it's not Dungeons and Dragons. It's going to be an entirely different pace and style of play than what a lot of people that I tend to play with are used to. Okay, so we need to return to setup. We are going to delete. We should also make sure we're on the same version as what I have on my laptop. Got to run it as an administrator. All right, second time's the charm. We're getting there. While that goes, let's actually pull up. I don't think I have them downloaded here. The encampment rules. So Payne's Porch is actually in Mordheim proper. It is called Cutthroat's Den. There's a PDF here. Please hold. Okay, here we are. See what I'm talking about. So these are the actual encampment rules for Cutthroat's Den specifically. And you can see what I'm talking about with like parties looking for housing. You're rolling a 2d6, and that kind of determines where your war band's housing is. There's going to be a lot of factions in this game. Not all the factions are going to start the game with the player characters, and I'm going to leave it up to the players to decide individually whether their character is doing it on their own, whether they are going to make some friends, or at the very least some reluctant allies with other player characters and make their own faction, or they might throw in some support for one of the already established factions. I've got a lot of them already worked up. These are all locations we can detail a little bit later, but I also like the idea of the players sometimes never going into the town. I mean, obviously, yes, that's the goal, but I want, like, if if there's someone who's a pit fighter or like wants their character to be like a pit fighter, then I want them to be able to like spend a session, if they so choose, just doing like pit fighting shit in Pain's Porch. Where is... Oh, it's in a different one. They're all on the same settlement events table. Town Crier 28. We're going to be referencing a lot of this Mordheim material. And if you're curious about any of it, go to this website, broheim.net. It is the best repository of all Mordheim stuff. I think Mordheim is great. Like you can see that these are all kind of published like in world. It's a Mordheim zine. I mean, look at this art, dude. Are you kidding me? Absolutely killer. Housing chart, surgery table. Okay, here we go. So it's a rolled D66. Oh, he doesn't need to essentially turn this into a rollable table. In Foundry, let us log back in just to make sure. Okay, we should be good. We'll let all of this update. I think we're just waiting on one. Okay. And we'll update all of these as well. You can see that there's a couple different game systems that I have. Okay, that's been updated. I don't... I need to go to this drive. I need to copy this folder. I need to paste there. Once that done copying over, I believe we just need to... Each world is going to have a like JSON file. And then we just need to navigate out to the JSON file. And I think we should be good. Let me close. Let's try and relaunch. Let's actually make sure it closed all the way. And with bated breath. It's right there. Hell yeah, brother. In Foundry, you send out an invite to a player and then they're able to access it, right? When a player wants to join the game, they're going to follow that link and then they're going to arrive at this page. We have kind of a placeholder text. I'll probably wind up adjusting this. The proudest city of the old world has been reduced to an infernal hell of smoldering craters and desolated buildings. The ancient architecture of our grandest mansions that once played host to the greatest nobles of our time is now inhabited by foul and putrid followers of the dark gods. Where once stood bustling markets and streets of commerce, now reigns only banditry and murder. The shadows of deathly ruins hide only cut purses and fell monstrosities. This will just kind of give everyone a brief understanding. I might also kind of use this as like a way of like last time on Mordheim, right? So that way players will get like a general, hey, this is what the overall thing is, and then here's specifically what happened the last time. So let's join. And this is it. All right, this is the thing. So I set up a dope macro and rollable table for short-term madness. You have a hot bar, or they call it a macro bar, that you can assign different things to. So I literally just have this random table assigned to 1. And anytime I hit that macro, it's going to roll on that table or perform whatever I have there. In this case, it is the short-term madness table. So we rolled a 47. Your posture crumples as you try to make sense of the insanity before you. You desperately look for a parental figure that can protect you. Once you find such a person, you latch onto them and refuse to leave their side, no matter what. Cool stuff, right? So, rollable table. I did have one for random encounters that I did not fill out. But you can see short-term madness. You essentially just need to enter in every row that you would want to be rollable. And the neat thing is that where I took this from, you get the same result for different ranges. So like if you roll, you're rolling a 1d100. If you get a 1 or a 2, you're getting this result. If you roll a 3 through a 7, you get this second result, so on and so forth. The cool thing is that you then can go ahead and adjust the weight. Because this occurs over a range of 2, I have it set to a weight of 2. This range occurs over a range of 5, so I have the weight set to 5. And then once that's done, you can click this scale button, which just like normalizes it and balances it out, quote unquote. And it determines the roll table formula and all that jazz for you. And this I kind of just did in, I don't know, like half a day. It was mostly just copying and editing. I will need to go back into this table because this was taken from a system that's D20 based, and it's also not Morkborg. So there's like conditions. It's from a 5e game. So I need to go in there and make some adjustments as far as what mechanically occurs on certain ones. Some of them are just roleplay based, like the ones that we just saw. Some of them are giving you like a specific condition or making you immune to a certain condition. So I need to go back in and edit it. But as far as inputting the table, that's done. So I need to create a new rollable table. This table will be called Settlement Events Table. We'll even go a step farther and just say Payne's Porch Events. And here we are. You can write a description. So like in the Short-Term Madness, I have a description of what will cure a short-term madness as well as like what will temporarily cure it. So when we roll, that is also displayed here in this text. Your mind is liberated from any sense of self you may possess. Desperate to find yourself again and believing anything, you automatically fail saving throws against being charmed. In Morkborg, charmed isn't like an actual condition. In 5e, charmed is a actual mechanical thing that occurs. This would be a little bit more a looser mechanical definition than what is offered in 5e, which is fine. Oh Lord, let's pull up the PDF. So I'm not going to worry about what we're rolling. I'm just going to input this data and we'll go from there. All right. Normalize result weights. We get a 1d36. And that's just because all of the weights are equal to 1. It would be different if we had adjusted the weights at all. If we drag, I'll drag this where you can see it. If I drag my handy dandy Payne's Porch Events table over to my 8 macro, we get a 30. Unexpected shortages in Payne's Porch cause all local traders to increase their prices. All weapon and equipment cost is doubled the normal number of silver. I don't know where to place this. I don't know if this should necessarily happen before the session or after. And by session, I mean like going into the city or not. I guess it'll depend. We'll see how long a session takes. But like in my mind, some of these are like session hooks. They're not just like random events. Some of them I can roll up into roles to resolve them, but I don't want to take away like the player autonomy. Like I just be like, oh yeah, you were pickpocketed and you didn't notice. Or like you didn't have an option to notice. I don't know. I don't want it to feel so much like a lot of those roles could wind up feeling like it's GM versus player. And despite the dark nature, I shouldn't be adversarial. So that's not the vibe. I've got a bug with me. All right, what else is on our notes? I guess regardless of whether we use that beginning, middle, or end, it doesn't matter. We don't need to worry about rolling at random for scenarios. I'll prepare whatever scenarios if I know that a party, because I will have them tell me whether they have a goal or not, and if they don't, then I'll prepare that on my own. So from there, we need to figure out navigation. Let me see if I still have this Morkborg map. I was about to say that I know there's a way to change this background image. I like that. That's cool. I know there's overland travel rules in Feretory or Heretic. The thing with that rule set also, I remember looking it up recently. There's not really a mechanism for failure, which I think is fine. Oh god, it's a race between Adobe and Firefox. See who can load this the fucking slowest. Yeah, so in these overland rules, these are distances and days spent traveling between the Herald lands of various locales. Traveling outside of known roads may take longer. Travel checklist, keep track of food and water. Remember to roll for the calendar of Necrobol daily. We won't be doing that, but we will be rolling on that calendar, just not daily. Roll for weather. I guess if anything, we can adjust. There's an events by the road table. And it's a D20 table. And this tells you to roll on it daily. I think what we would want is for us to roll on it each district. There's no fail state in which you can't get to where you're going. It's just going to eat away at your resources. So there's never a fail state where it's just like, oh, you're just lost and you can't get there. You will ultimately get to where you need to go. But if you chart a crazy path, then it's going to cost you some resources. Like it's going to already cost you resources to begin with. I don't think there's a rations thing. I think it just says food and water. There's no section for rations. There is one for water skin, which is 4 days of water. There is dried food. Dried food is 1 silver for 1 day's worth. Lard may function as 5 meals. I was originally going to have the session be over the course of a day, but I feel like that also can kind of remove the sense of scale and scope. I kind of want the session to feel like if anyone's seen The Green Knight by A24, having us try to plan this like where the session happens over the course of a couple days as opposed to like 1 day, I think is going to work better. Now what we actually need to do is put in this district events table, and that's just a D20. There's a part of me that wants to make, oh god, there's a part of me that wants to make a separate D20 table for each one of the districts. How many districts are there? Ooh-wee. That'd be like 700 entries. Although I guess for the sake of play, here's what we'll do. We'll make a generic one, and then as we have time, we'll start to build out those district-specific events. All right, let's take care of the corpse plundering table while we're here. What do we get? Golden ball with an invisible seam twists open. Now what we need to do is make some notes, I think, for the order of operations when it comes to running a session. While we're here and on a roll, the weather table. All right. I think that's going to do it for tonight. We got our Foundry virtual tabletop consistent between my laptop and my PC. We built out a ton of tables that we are going to need to run most of the game, if not all of it. We will need to build out some more specific tables, or I would like to build out some more specific tables, one per, like a generic, or I'd like a district events. I'm going to go and redo my session order notes. And next time, I don't know what we'll do next time. Maybe we'll probably build out Payne's Porch is probably the next place we would need to go and build out some of the locations there that the players can visit before they go on a journey. And I think once we have that, we really have almost everything. I guess the only other thing would be to like stat or put in some possible encounters. We can deal with that later. As always, thank you for everyone that's watched, that hit me up with some blurps, that liked, that subscribed, that followed. I'll be editing this and I'll upload it to YouTube and we'll see what happens. But as always, keep circulating the tapes. I'll see you in time.